วันนี้นะครับคนที่จะเป็นโมเดเลเตอร์นะครับในงานวันนี้นะครับก็จะเป็นพี่โอนะครับผมเป็น Head of Venture Builder นะครับของ SUI 10X นะครับก็ขอเสียงปรบมือพี่โอหน่อยครับครับผมอีกท่านหนึ่งนะครับก็จะเป็นคุณเฮนรี่นะครับที่มาจากAPACของซุยนะครับผมก็วันนี้เขาก็บินตรงมาเลยนะครับผมก็ขอเสียงตบมือให้เฮนรี่ด้วยครับโอเคนั้นกันผมขอส่งต่อไมค์ให้กับพี่โอแล้วก็this session will conduct in English นะครับ thank you
Okay. So hi everyone. So my name is O, as Keng introduced. So I'm running the venture builder team here at SUI 10X, and today we got Henry from SUI. So a good friend since before you joined SUI. We've met at SUI 10X as well, right? So glad to have you back here. Maybe Henry, you wanna introduce yourself a bit, your background?
Okay, for sure. Hi everyone. Oh yeah, and first of all, thank you guys for inviting us here. So my name is Henry, and I'm on the ecosystem team for Mysten Labs and working on SUI. My main focuses are the SUI Move language, games, DeFi, and also kind of like the overall APAC region. And prior to joining Mysten Labs, I was working on a parachain on Polkadot called Moonbeam. There I was working for like a similar role. And then early on in my career, I was a software engineer at like Microsoft. Yeah, so I'm currently based in Taipei, but I am from Beijing.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so before we begin the session, so thank you everyone for turning out after a really long week of blockchain genesis and all the side events and alcohol being run through your system right now. So thanks for still showing up. I guess I'll keep my questions pretty short so that we are open up for more time for Q&A, so that you guys can ask about like SUI technical and marketing and biz stuff. So first question, basic questions like, can you introduce SUI? What is it?
So I mean SUI is like, to sum it up, it is like a smart contract platform. But you know what makes SUI like different? There's a few things that I think that sets SUI apart. And the first thing is that it is a smart contract platform that is based on the Move language, and more specifically, it's based on SUI Move, which is kind of like an implementation of Move. And what makes us special is that, you know, the majority of smart contract like blockchains we see in the market currently, they're like EVM chains. But SUI is based on Move, which is definitely, you know, like not the same as like EVM at all. It has a very different like programming model, and also how it views its object from like EVM. And Move was first created at Facebook. It was created from the ground up to be a very safe language, and it was also created with the intent of being used for smart contracts. And also, if we compare it to some of the other non-EVM chains, like Solana, that is based on Rust, because Move was created to be used with smart contract, it has a lot of built-in features that Rust currently lacks. For instance, in SUI Move, the VM does all the auth checks, so you don't have to do that manually. Whereas in Solana, you will have to do it. If you use Rust, you have to do it manually. But or you can also use Anchor, which like the framework will do it for you. But because the Move was created just for smart contract, it has that feature built in. And the second reason that makes like SUI different than some of the current like layer one chains is that the SUI network is created also from the ground up to be as parallelizable as possible. What it means that SUI is designed to be horizontally scalable, both for in terms of speed and throughput, and also in terms of storage and space. So the main reason we wanted to make it that way is for SUI to support low friction, also mass consumer grade like applications. Kind of like the third reason that I think makes SUI like different from like the other blockchains is that we have native API support for a lot of like crypto features. For instance, we will have like a native API support for zero knowledge proofs, and also for on-chain VRFs. So basically on-chain randomness. So before, if you wanted to, get verifiable randomness for like a game, you would have to use it. You had to use it like Chainlink, or some other type of oracle. But on SUI, we can get the randomness just as a part of how our chain works, so that you can get like on-chain verifiable randomness for very, very cheap. Yep.
See, and just to go off track from the question a bit, so you mentioned parallelism, right? And I think like a lot of blockchains also claim that they have like really high TPS, high throughput, right? Solana is one of them that claims a lot of TPS. Can you kind of like elaborate a bit like on parallelism? Like how does it actually work, and why is it superior to, I guess, like other tech?
All right. So I think for that question, I kind of have to explain why we had to create a new smart contract language, and the main reason for that is because so the main part of Move that we use to kind of scale our chain is the Move's ownership system. So because of how Move works, we can ensure that objects that are used in a certain transaction is only allowed to be touched by its owner. Whereas in like Ethereum, there isn't really a strict like enforcement of ownership. You can kind of create it on top of Ethereum by using things like roles. But in Move, like the object ownership is enforced at the smart contract language level. So that ensures, if, for instance, if I own like this like object, it can be like an NFT. Only I can access it, and only I can use it. Only I can spend it or like transfer it. And because of that, the way that SUI processes like transactions, it doesn't have to like fully order every transaction that is sent to our chain. Instead of fully ordering them, we only have to order the ones that are causally related. Basically, I have to like order the transactions that deal with the objects that I own myself, or like, and whereas you, for instance, you have like certain like coins or like NFTs, you would have to order those. But between us, those like they don't have to be ordered relatively to each other. So what that means in terms of how we can process, like a transaction set, instead of having to have a global view of the whole set, we can break the set into much smaller, independent like subsets. And then once we have those smaller sets, we can give them to like individual cores or like individual threads. and those cores or like workers, they can all work in like parallel to process them, and that also makes our chain fully like horizontally scalable. It means that the more like workers that you add, the higher throughput that you are going to get. Yeah.
So I think like trying to compare back to Ethereum, I guess you could say it's a way kind of like similar to sharding on Ethereum, but on a much like specific, like smaller scale where each of the like items, whether it's wallets or tokens inside SUI or Move, is actually an object, right? So in that way, when you assign ownership, you don't have to actually like go and tell everyone that, oh, who's owner of this, who's gonna change this, right? But you know right away who's gonna be owner, and this like object is only going to be changed if its owner is interacting with it, right? So you can like kind of like really separate and parallelize. You know for sure that who is gonna affect this object.
Right. So that I think that is a very good analogy. It is a type of sharding, and I think we call that it's called intervalidator sharding. So and like the key here is that we can only do it because smart contracts on SUI are created with Move, because we need that language to guarantee that this object can only be touched by by its owner, basically.
Right. And I think like we spoke previously this afternoon, and we talked about like how we have like how we query like ERC20 balance on Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
And the way that we have to do it right now is that you need to know the wallet address that you want to query, but you also need to know all the addresses of the ERC20 that you wanna ask for the balance as well, right? So you have to go through each of the contract like that, and you have to know in advance. But in SUI, I think you know the ownership, you know who owns what token, right? So you can query that right away, really efficient.
Right. Yeah, because like in SUI, the VM, it would keep track of like, for instance, if you have an address, you can just simply query the VM for like what object this address owns. So in that way, it's a much more like efficient call if you want to find out, a certain wallet, every coin or every object that it currently owns.
Cool. Yeah. So touch on the technical bit a bit, maybe a bit too far. So fast forwarding to more on the business side, right? So one of the questions we actually got from the participants here during registration is, what's SUI's strategy to beat or make a difference with other chains in terms of say business or marketing?
Okay. So I think like to kind of answer that, like, so first of all, like I think right now, like we're in like fairly like deep crypto winter, and also the overall kind of like the macroeconomic like situation. There's a chance that it could even get worse. So because of that, we don't want to try to like replicate what the other layer ones did during the last like cycle when it was like a much better market. And basically, I think to kind of sum that up, like I think a lot of the layer one strategy from the last cycle was not all, but like quite a few of them is to kind of gain like TVL by using their own tokens as kind of like this like yield, to try to draw more people and more like like applications to come to their chain, and that worked like that was particularly common with like EVM chains, just because it's very easy for like like an EVM like DApp to go to some other EVM chain. But I think like kind of toward the second half, we saw that kind of strategy started to not work as well anymore. So and we don't want to do like similar things. For us, we are very focused on like specific like market verticals. For instance, SUI is very focused on gaming, and also focused on like NFTs. So yeah, So I think currently we're kind of focused on gaming and FTs, but like further down the line, we also want to focus on like social media apps as well. So basically these like categories of apps are the ones that can use like the advantages of SUI to the fullest, which are the high throughput, and also like fast like finality. And like the other thing that we're basically seeing like parallels between what is currently happening in like blockchain games and what did happen kind of like a few years ago with like mobile gaming, and we kind of seeing these two markets kind of develop in like similar ways, and we want to be ready when like blockchain gaming gets its first like the first few like really big hits, like similar the equivalent to like Clash of Clans. Yeah, so we want to be ready to catch that wave of like blockchain gaming adoption. So and in terms of go to market, we're very focused on like we're very focused on like a coherent global strategy. Like we're very we want to go to where the most like activity is, and currently we're seeing like a very high level of activity in like APAC, and that is where we're planning to put like quite a bit of our like focus on. Yeah.
I see. And I guess use cases like comes with parallelism, high TPS. What kind of use cases are you maybe pushing for, or what's like you see would you benefit a lot from using like SUI?
So I think that's also what I had just said. So like a lot of it is like Web3 games, but also because like Web3 games and like NFTs, they kind of like overlap. So like when I say like NFTs on SUI, like what is an NFT is not really the same concept as what an NFT is on like Ethereum, because on like an EVM chain, like once you mint an NFT, that is like the object is fixed. You really cannot change it anymore. But on SUI, like when you create an NFT, that can still be changed. So like there's a lot more like logic, and basically there's a lot more that you can do with NFTs. And some of the best use cases for that is in games. So one team that I work fairly closely with, they're creating this game, and it's basically like a spaceship like MMO, and the game is called The Search for Animera. So kind of the gameplay loop of this game is that you kind of control your own ship, and like the main point of the game is kind of like to make the ship like better and better, and the ship is basically represented by all of its parts are represented by like NFTs, and all of those NFTs, they can be like upgraded. So the whole gameplay is very much like focused on upgrading these like NFTs. So that is kind of an example of a type of application that can use like the SUI like features to like kind of like to its full extent. Yeah.
And you actually showed me the game. The landing page is really great. Maybe at the end of this we could demo some of them, right? The game and also the copy.art. I think that's also interesting.
Yeah, so also like that game is being built on the Unreal 5 engine. So I think on SUI like we want to like kind of like not only focus on one specific type of game. We want to have like want to be able to support like a big range of games, and that includes like AAA games, and also includes like indie games, and also like GameFi games. So for this specific game, it is built using the latest engine, and the way they're using it is through like a SUI Unreal 5 SDK. That is actually not created by us, but is created by some other team that is also in the SUI ecosystem. So yeah, so there's already quite a bit of like activity happening, and there's a lot of teams who are creating these tools and like infrastructure that allows people to create like really fully immersive games on SUI.
That's cool. So there's all the SDK.
Yeah.
Unofficial, right? Made by
So
the
yeah,
teams.
because like that one is not made by the SUI team, but it's made by this team called Origin Byte. So they're basically like an NFT infrastructure team,
Okay.
and they're quite like active in the SUI ecosystem.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we know a bit about SUI, right? I guess like for most of us, I guess here, like we are either like builders, biz or dev, coming from EVM, Solana, or Solidity itself. How would you like persuade them or like onboard them onto Move and SUI?
So I think that is also something that we are doing, that SUI is doing. It's kind of like not quite the same as other like a lot of the previous layer one chains. I think in the previous cycle, there was a lot of focus on being compatible with like EVM, and then because when you have like an EVM compatible chain, you can use the same like tool chain as the Ethereum, and it's also very easy for you to like attract teams and also dApps from like Ethereum, but kind of like what I said before, we think like the overall EVM market has become like fairly like saturated, and I think like right now, if you create like a new EVM chain, like I don't think like there is like a lot of like market share for you to like gain. So our current focus, is not trying to be like compatible with with like EVM, and the reason for that is because we think like just because of how like EVM works, there are certain like fundamental limits to what it can do. So our goal is more to fill in the non-EVM smart contract niche, and so we're like very focused on that part, and we're also like very transparent with that like if you want to move your dApp to SUI, and if your app was built on like Ethereum, you will have to like recreate your smart contracts. But I think like in the process of doing it, a lot of the apps are seeing that when they had to create their dApp for like Ethereum, they had to kind of make a lot of like compromise in terms of like what features that they can offer, and then when they recreate their dApp for like Move for SUI, they're seeing that they are able to implement like a dApp that's much closer to what they had like envisioned it to be. So that is like a common case. So yeah, we're like very willing to help teams that want to create their project in Move, and also to like migrate to SUI. Yeah.
Cool. Next question, FTX. SUI was had one of like the main investor as FTX, right? Are you affected by them?
So it is very like unfortunate what happened with like FTX and Alameda, and you know it's especially for people who lost money, um, or like for companies or project that cannot operate anymore. Um, so for SUI, I would say it definitely had an impact, especially because what happened affects the whole industry. Um, but in for us, like in terms of like short term like direct monetary impact, there wasn't too much, because fortunately we were able to close our round fully, like kind of like earlier on in the year. So by the time that this had happened, like we had already received like the entirety of our funding, and like all of our funding was stored in the form of like cash and bonds. Um, and also quite like fortunate for us, because we hadn't like released our token yet, which means that we did not have to like market make on FTX, so that we also didn't have like any assets on FTX. Um, but that said, like FTX Ventures was still like one of our lead investors, so there are still like some impacts for sure. But yeah, but like also kind of like fortunate for us, we were also invested by quite a few other like companies too, you know, including Jump, like Binance and such. But not only those, we were also invested by some like Web 2 companies as well, such as the one that we had just recently announced, which is NCSoft. So NCSoft, they were one of our investors in Series B, and the kind of the reason why we kind of like we wanted them to invest is also kind of we wanted to expand our exposure to not only like, you know, Web3 VCs, but we also wanted to, you know, have close like partnerships with like Web 2 like AAA companies like that create games, because we think like that also kind of lowers our risk too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So next question would be on the vision and future roadmap. What's the current roadmap for our suite?
So kind of to give like a broad like overview. So in the last like two weeks, we have just launched the wave 1 of our testnet. So I think our testnet will like, we're planning to have like 4 waves, and then each wave will last between like 4 to 6 weeks. So we're hoping that our mainnet will launch in the first half of next year. But kind of like to talk about it more like broadly, we are like planning to be in it for the long term, because we understand that we are trying to basically build up like this like non-EVM smart contract market, and this market is still very young, you know, like, but yeah, like of course like the overall like Web3 industry itself is very young, but the like EVM smart contract niche like within it is even younger, so that we know that there's a lot of work to be done, and also it will require like quite a lot of time. So we are definitely planning for the long term, and we understand that, you know, for the like EVM ecosystem, it will take quite a bit of work and time to kind of catch up on like certain things. For instance, to have like similar quality of like dev tooling as like Ethereum, like that itself will take years. So we're like very prepared to be kind of working with everyone like over like a very long like period of time.
An extra question from me. So there are product builders out there. Are there any incentives for them to build on SUI now?
Yeah. So we had just announced the SUI Foundation Developer Grant in the last month. So the grant is basically the amount is between 10K to 100K USD, and on top of that, you can also receive SUI tokens, so basically anyone can like apply to it, and so if you want to see like kind of like how the grant works, you can search for like SUI Foundation, and then the SUI Foundation homepage should give everyone like a pretty good idea for how the grant works. Yeah.
So you heard that 10K to
100K.
100K USD plus maybe SUI tokens.
Right. And like for that amount is also, like there are some projects that might need more. So for those, they can apply for like multiple terms.
Yeah, and so last question out of also the script from me before handing over to Q&A. Is SUI an ETH killer?
I would say no, because like I said, like we are not in the same market as like Ethereum. We are very much like a non EVM smart contract chain. Like there are some teams like they're trying to build like EVM on SUI, but like we are kind of saying like it's not even it. Like there are some teams that want to do it, and we are not gonna stop them from like doing it. But that feature is not really like a high priority for us, because just because of how EVM works, there might be a way to get the EVM smart contracts to run on SUI, but by doing that, you wouldn't really take like advantage of like all the things that make SUI special. Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks. So I think that wraps up the questions for me. Any questions from the audience? Asking Henry. Anyone? We actually have some okay. We actually have some notebooks from notebook, as in the paper notebooks from SUI to share. So anyone asking questions will receive one.
Actually, I have two questions, but let's begin with the first one. The first one would be the entry barrier from the people that already are in the MetaMask ecosystem, right? How does SUI plan to deal with like the incoming users that like they're not used to using like SUI wallet, right? So I think this is one of the problem that you will have to onboard them into the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And the second question is that you say that SUI use a parallel, right? That may have a lower cost in the transaction, but as the users grow, like because right now SUI is a very like early stage, right? But as users amount grow, the transaction fee will also grow too. So how do SUI plan to deal with this?
All right, cool. So it's kind of like two questions, right? Yeah. So I'll answer the first question. So I think you're right. Like wallets are a very important way to on-ramp like new users. And currently within the EVM market, like MetaMask has by far like the biggest market share. But I think like right now what I'm starting to see in terms of like some of the more like innovative wallets are trying to like do, they're trying to shift away from the currently how like wallets work in general. Like currently the way that MetaMask works, you have to import or generate a new key, right? And from the key you can generate your accounts. But for like someone who is not like a Web3 native user, that process is very hard to generate their own key and to create like a new wallet from that key. So what I'm seeing from like some of these like wallet teams is that they're trying to work with like social login, or kind of just they want to like abstract the account level away from like storing your key, whereas you only need to know your password or have like other ways to verify that you own this account. So in that case, even sometimes your key get lost, you might still be able to get your like account balance back. And I think because of that, I think like right now, I don't think the focus is trying to get the users from MetaMask, because even though MetaMask, it is by far the biggest like EVM wallet, if you compare to like the overall like people who use internet, it's still very, very small. So for SUI, I think our focus is on supporting kind of like the next gen wallets, where it will even like abstract away the need to kind of store and know your key, and it will work kind of much closer to kind of how like Web 2 works, where you only need to have your like social login, and then you can just start like sending like transfers. Yeah, so that is the first question. And sorry, what was your second question?
The question is that as the users grow, even the chain has a low transaction cost rate, but the amount of users will bring the gas fee up again.
Okay, so this part, so you kind of need to know a little bit about how gas fee works on SUI, and basically the way that gas works on SUI is, okay, so to know how gas fee works, you also need to know how like how objects work on SUI. So on SUI, basically there are broadly two types of objects. One is like owned objects, basically objects that are owned by an address or owned by some other object. They're considered owned. And the other type of objects are shared objects, where shared objects can be used by like anyone. And the way that SUI gas works, that when you have like transactions that only involve owned objects, that fee is always going to be flat. That fee is flat because the way that SUI processes transactions that only uses owned object is very, very quick. And that is not being like limited by how many people will use SUI, because that can always be like always be processed in parallel when it's only using owned objects. So that gas fee is always going to be flat. And the other type is that for transactions that use like shared objects. So for those types of transactions, the fee can like change. So it can either scale up or scale down. Basically, when a shared object becomes very hot, which means like it's being used in a short period of time by like many people, then the fee for transactions that use that specific shared object will go up. But that will only affect transactions that involve that specific shared objects. So for everyone else that's not using that shared object, their gas fee would be the same. So the way that our fee market is designed to not like affect everyone in the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
please.
I guess my question is so SUI is written in Move, right? And I think there are also other smart contract platforms coming out in Move, and most recently is Aptos.
Yep.
I guess what are like is a unique point about SUI that's different from Aptos, and are there any other key differences between SUI and Aptos?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think like Atos and SUI are currently like the two main like move-based smart contracts. Move-based smart contract chains. And so they are actually quite different, and the main reason is because so like Aptos works much similar to classical blockchains, whereas SUI is basically it doesn't work like the same way as like a classical blockchain, and that is because like Aptos is still very much account based, whereas SUI is much more like object based. So basically everything in SUI is an object, and all the transactions in SUI, they taking like objects as inputs, and then they do like formations on these objects, and their inputs and outputs are both only expressed in terms of objects. Whereas Aptos, it does have like the concept of object too, but it is still kind of like very much account based. So it kind of works in a way that's closer to like Ethereum, whereas SUI is kind of like okay. So if you put like Ethereum and like SUI on like a spectrum, Ethereum would be on the far left, and then SUI would be on the far right, and Aptos will be somewhere between those. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hi, Henry.
Hello.
I'm Mike. So, my background is I am a Web3 GameFi developer. That's actually my side job, but anyways. So, I'm interested in SUI because it's parallelism, and on their homepage it says that SUI is fast AF. So, my actual question is that, so in my experience when I'm developing a game and I cannot like make a game to be so complex and fun to play because I can only do like turn-based game and card game. So will I be able to build a game to be so complex like FPS or mobile games using Move on SUI?
Right. So like I kind of said earlier, like SUI is basically designed to create like these like to kind of like to support like AAA style games too, but of course like we don't only want to have like AAA games. We want to have like a wide range of games, but we are forming very close like partnerships with like AAA gaming companies like NC Soft, and our goal is to have them create these like classic like AAA type games that are like run fully on SUI. So yeah, I actually now might be a good time to show them like a trailer. Yeah, should we just? I think it's fine to just search for it. We can just like go to like Chrome or something. No, it's just like we're just showing them the front page. Okay, search for. Okay. Yeah, so this game is the one that I kind of mentioned. It's like a space-themed like MMO game that is built on like Unreal 5. So this game is currently being built on SUI, and the kind of like experience you are gonna have here, it's basically gonna be very similar to the current like AAA like PC games. Yeah.
So is this fully on-chain or?
So currently, so the way that this game works is that you can control your own like spaceship, right? And all the parts of that spaceship, they are like NFTs, and there are also NFTs that can be like modified or they can be upgraded, and they all have like an impact on how the game plays. And so all of that, like the NFTs and all of that logic, that is going to be on SUI. Yeah.
Is it part of like the NC soft project?
No, I actually this is like a smaller team.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So I think that's a wrap. Henry, you hang around in this space for a while, right? So
Sure, for sure.
yeah, if you have any more like questions, feel free to go up to Henry to talk.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Right. Thank you so much for everyone for joining.